A lot of people will tell you the PlayStation Portal isn't worth buying if you can't use the new PlayStation Plus cloud streaming features. But is that actually true in 2026? I've owned the Portal since day one. In fact, I own all three models you can buy right now. I've used them on my home network, on vacation, and yes, even in the bath. The Portal has seen some massive software updates since launch, but in this video, we are ignoring the cloud. I am focusing purely on the core remote play experience to give you my honest take on whether the Portal is actually worth your money. So if we're talking about whether the Portal is worth it without cloud streaming, we have to start with the global availability reality here. Cloud streaming is a great feature, but unfortunately it is still region locked. We still have friends in places like Australia and in the Middle East who have zero access to it. It is taking Sony a long time to roll this out globally. So if you're in one of those regions, remote play isn't just an alternative, it's your only option. But honestly, remote play does things that cloud streaming simply cannot do. First, let's be clear, you absolutely need a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 Pro to use remote play. It is not a standalone device and it won't connect to a PlayStation 4, but once you are hooked up to your PlayStation 5, it completely opens up your library. You can stream your entire backlog of amazing PS4 games right to your Portal, which is something you just can't do with the limited PlayStation Plus cloud catalogue, as it's currently PS5 games only. Then there is the massive advantage of physical games. Buying physical games is still the absolute best way to actually own your games. You know, you can sell them, pass them on to friends or family, and if you ever lose your PlayStation account, your disc still works. Just pop it in with your new account and you're ready to go, as it's not tied to an online account like all your digital purchases are. Plus, the price difference is huge. Let's take Resident Evil 9 Requiem for example. Here in the UK, you could pre-order the physical copy for under £50 on Amazon. I think it was like 47 or 48, while the digital version was sitting at a whopping full price of £70. So you save over £20 right away, pop that disc into your PS5, and you're ready to play on your Portal via remote play. The only downside is that you have to physically get up to change the disc when you want to switch game. At home, that's no big deal. It's probably good for us to get up and move around anyway during long gaming sessions, but if you are going away on vacation, you have to plan ahead. You need to make sure you leave a great game, like Pragmata, in the disk drive before you leave the house, so it's always available to play via remote play while you're away, because you obviously won't be able to get to your PlayStation 5 to change the disc. When it comes to the real world performance when you're off the grid, we have to start with your home network, because with remote play, your PlayStation 5 is essentially the server. So your home internet connection is always going to be the bottleneck, which is why you need good internet, people. But here is the massive news. Since the 7.0 update, the software update for the Portal, remote play performance has improved to the point where I genuinely believe it beats cloud streaming. Previously, the cloud felt smoother, but now the image via remote play is incredibly crisp and that input delay has dropped significantly. Just to be clear, when playing at home on my own network, I'm seeing latency consistently sitting around 2 milliseconds compared to 25 milliseconds I was getting on the cloud. That is an absolute game changer if you're all about, performance and lag and latency and all that stuff. But honestly, even the 25 milliseconds, you do get used to it, so it's no biggie, but I know a lot of you would want to know the difference between them. There's also a massive visual advantage here. If you're lucky enough to own the PS5 Pro, that is, remote play is definitively the best way to play. You're actually streaming the PS5 Pro enhanced versions of your games if you want, complete with all that beautiful ray tracing and PSSR2 enhancements directly to your Portal. If you're relying on PlayStation Plus cloud streaming, for example, they are currently only streaming the base PS5 versions of those games. So for the absolute best, visual fidelity and all the visual effects, the Pro and the remote play combo is unmatched. If you want those results, there is one non-negotiable rule though. You must hardwire your PS5 directly to your router or your modem via an Ethernet cable. And if you're playing at home on the same network, you need to make sure your home Wi-Fi setup is strong and uncongested. If you have, 5 other people in the house downloading files or streaming 4K video, your portal will struggle. A clear local connection is just as important. Hardwiring makes it a night and day difference to connection stability and overall image quality. I swear by it. It is the single biggest tip for getting the most out of your portal, and it's pretty much the only tip I do constantly. I always have mine hardwired in. When I take the portal out and about, my preferred way to play is tethering it directly to my phone's 5G mobile hotspot. As long as you have a fast 5G signal, and if you have a decent signal, 5G is really fast, it runs fantastically. It is so much better than relying on public, coffee shop Wi-Fi, which is almost always heavily throttled and just crippled by network congestion because there's loads of people using it, and usually it's really slow anyway. I also tested this on vacation, and honestly, hotel Wi-Fi is a complete coin toss. Sometimes it works surprisingly well, and other times it is just completely unplayable. You might not even be able to connect. It's purely on a case-by-case basis, depending on the hotel's Wi-Fi setup, if it's fast enough, and not got thousands of people using the same network. Because of those external variables, I always recommend sticking to single-player games, or if you must play multiplayer, stick to PvE multiplayer like Helldivers 2, where you're just having, fun co-op with friends. I completely advise against playing, competitive multiplayer on the portal. You're streaming a game, which inherently adds lag, and you will always be at a massive disadvantage against someone playing natively on a hardwired PS5. Stick to the single player backlog and you'll have a much better time. A big reason remote play works so well is the actual hardware. You're getting the full PS5 experience in your hands because it's essentially a DualSense controller split in half. You get the incredible haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, which you really want when playing amazing games like Pragmata and Mouse PI for Hire. It just adds to the immersion. The 8-inch 1080p 60 FPS LCD touchscreen looks fantastic, especially with the 7.0 update, which we spoke about via remote play. But I do have to point out a few gripes about how you interact with the UI. First, they recently changed how the PlayStation button behaves during remote play. It used to be a simple press to pull up your console's dashboard, just like the standard DualSense does. Now pressing it brings up the side menu, and you actually have to use the touchscreen to click on the PS5 control center. It just adds, another unnecessary step. Another thing I'm just not a big fan of is the implementation of the touchpad. On the DualSense, you have the physical touchpad. You can press for various actions. On the portal, they've mapped that to the touchscreen. It works well most of the time, but it's just not ideal. I really wish they had some sort of physical button to represent the touchpad. Plus, relying on the touchscreen for these inputs, it just leaves it covered in smudgy fingerprints. And I like to keep the screen as clean as possible. More importantly though, it is incredibly comfortable for long gaming sessions. It feels exactly like holding a standard DualSense controller does, making it probably the most comfortable handheld gaming device I've ever used. If you're sitting on the couch, for 3 hours grinding out trophies on this thing, your hands are not going to cramp up. Speaking of long gaming sessions, the battery life with, remote play usually sits right around 3-4 hours-ish, depending on, your screen brightness and how much haptics you've got on and light bars and all that stuff. But it is kind of like what you'd expect. However, we need to talk about the downsides. There are two camps here: software restrictions that Sony could easily fix, and permanent hardware limitations that we just have to accept until we get, the upgraded PlayStation Portal OLED, which is hopefully coming this year. On the software side, you can't open YouTube, Netflix, Apple TV, or even Sony Pictures Core, which is Sony, which is just mind-boggling. You cannot open these via remote play. The system simply just blocks the feed and doesn't allow you. So opening up media apps would be a massive, easy software upgrade, and a value add for people who rely solely on remote play, who maybe don't have access to PlayStation Plus cloud gaming. So maybe that will come in the future. Fingers crossed. Let me know if you'd like to see that happen. But then we have the hardware limitations. The one for me is there's no Bluetooth chip on this device. If you want wireless audio, you cannot use your standard Bluetooth headphones. You are locked into buying a PlayStation Link headset like the Pulse Elite or Pulse Explorer, which means spending almost the exact same amount of money again as you did on the Portal. Fortunately, there is a 3.5mm headphone jack, so you can fall back on to a wired headset. Right, let's talk about how using this device in your life actually feels, because the biggest benefit of the PlayStation Portal isn't the screen or, the connection or anything like that, in my opinion. It is the absolute convenience. This thing is the ultimate backlog clearing machine. We all have that never-ending list of games we want to play, and finding time to sit in front of the main TV isn't always easy. Maybe your family is using the TV to watch something, or maybe you just want to, have the sports running in the background. The Portal completely removes that problem. Even if the main TV is in use, it doesn't stop you from making progress on your games. You can chill playing on the sofa with your family. You can take it to work and play your games. You can play lying in bed at night before you go to sleep. Or, as I mentioned earlier, you can even play it while chilling out in the bath. Anywhere you have a decent enough internet connection, you can be gaming on the Portal. That flexibility is what makes this device so special. So, is the PlayStation Portal worth buying in 2026 purely for remote play, entirely ignoring the cloud because maybe you don't want to have an expensive PlayStation Plus premium subscription? Because let's get real, it is expensive. If you have a solid network connection and a library of physical or digital PS5 and PS4 games, absolutely, yes it is. It is definitely the best way to clear your backlog away from the TV, because it's the only option on the market that gives you those exclusive PlayStation features like the adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. Combine that with, the super comfortable DualSense shape, it is just a winner. Plus, it is incredibly simple to set up. That is like one of the benefits for me, and one of the selling points of console gaming is things just being simple, not having to tweak and play around with things like you do with PC gaming. So you don't need to be a technical guru or spend hours tweaking dedicated software like you do maybe with a PC gaming handheld. You literally scan the QR code on the Portal, which will appear on the screen with your phone. It logs you in via the PlayStation app, connects to your PlayStation 5, and you're good to go. It makes it perfect for anyone of any age to just pick up and play. But there is one massive caveat, and this applies to absolutely everyone. If you have bad internet wherever you plan on playing this, it will not be a good experience. It will do absolutely nothing. The entire device relies on having a good, stable, uncongested internet connection. So keep that in mind. And if you are struggling with that, I've got loads of tips videos on the channel about how to get better performance. So make sure you subscribe and check them out. Now, if your internet connection is solid and you want to know if cloud streaming on the Portal actually makes the Portal worth buying, because maybe you're in a region where PlayStation Plus premium cloud streaming is available and you want to buy this without a PS5 to play your games, I check that out in this video on screen right now to get to the bottom of it and find the answers out for you. So check it out right now.